I will not sit here and stand for blasphemy against me.
Blasphemy against you? What the hell are you? Are you Jesus Christ, you loser?
All right, welcome back to the show. We've got a lot to talk about. Matt Gaetz just withdrew from becoming the Attorney General, which is huge. We'll get to that in a second. But before we start, I want to start off the show with something a little less serious, something a little funny. So there's this guy, Allan Lichman is his name, but we're going to call him Mr. Muppet Man because he looks like a Muppet. He's basically he's a election predictor.
Yes.
if that's a title. He's pretty big. I think a lot of the libs trust his. He has like 13 keys to the presidency. It's just his system of electing or deciding who he thinks will win. Anyway, he predicted Kamala Harris would win the election. And in case you've been living under a rock for the last 2 weeks, she didn't win. So he went on the Piers Morgan show, and this other guy, what's his name? Cenk?
Cenk, yeah.
Cenk. He's got like some. It's like a Russian name or something. It's weird, so I can't say his last name. But anyway, he's a big lib too. He has his own show, and they get really heated in this video because Cenk calls out the fact that Allan Lichman, Mr. Muppet Man, got his prediction wildly off, and it gets super heated. So this is funny. We'll just watch this clip together.
Don't blame the voters. I think, look, we could get into this discussion, but one, I think you're blaming the voters. I think that's a terrible idea. Look, I debated Professor Lichman before. I told him his theories about the keys were absurd. I was right. He was wrong. I said he'd lose his keys.
No, you were
Couldn't
not
find
right,
him before
and I
the
was
election.
not wrong. And that's a cheap shot, and I won't stand for it.
Well, who won, brother?
You should not be taking cheap shots at me.
Who won?
You want to make your
you
point,
live
make your
in
point.
a total
Don't make
world
it
of denial.
I read your own followers' comments, and they all trashed you, every one of them, and supported me.
Yeah,
so quiet with your personal attacks.
Come find out again.
Make whatever point you want. Don't make it personal.
You don't know anything. You don't know anything.
You attacked me personally.
You're so deluded.
Oh, right. I've only been a professor for 51 years.
On this program, I've never been able
books.
to finish a thought.
How many books have you published? No, because you're personally attacking me again. Say whatever you want, but I'm not going to stand for personal
brother, you
attacks.
got it wrong.
Say
you were
whatever you want.
preposterously and stupidly wrong. So, okay, all right. Can I just finish a goddamn thought ever on this show?
No, not if you're personally I admitted I was wrong. I don't need you to call me stupid.
Okay.
Can I just say, it's great to see you Democrats all getting along so well.
Who taught you manners?
It's lovely to see a post-election harmony as you all come together again.
We're just one right now.
Hey, Alan, you deserve a tall glass of shut-up juice, so can you just shut up for a second? And let someone who knows what they're doing.
You're so right, Pierre. Okay? You're so right. We're so unified right now.
So I will not sit here and stand for personal attacks, for blasphemy against me. You don't need to do that. You don't
blasphemy against you. Who the hell are you? Are you Jesus Christ, you loser? Okay, can I just give the correct answer for once?
Okay, so this is it's just hilarious on many accounts because Mr. Muppet Man in the video he says, "I've been a professor for 50 years."
Yeah.
Cenk says you were stupidly wrong, and this guy immediately says, "Don't call me stupid." No one called you stupid, bro. He just said you were stupidly wrong. Anyway, so Mr. Muppet Man deactivated his account on Twitter and announced it a day after this video went viral everywhere on Twitter. And so
no kidding.
He couldn't take the heat. He shut down his account. And
that's a lib for you. They can't take the heat. You can't.
So
they got to get out.
He's got 13 keys, and basically what these keys are is different categories, and then he ranks based on each candidate where the candidate stands. So you've got midterm gains, no primary contest. You've got incumbent seeking re-election. So like incumbent seeking re-election, that one went for Trump. That was an objective one. However, there are other ones like short-term economy, long-term economy, and major policy change. And he ranked all of those for Kamala Harris.
Which is ridiculous.
Yeah. Exactly. She does not have any short-term economy gains.
No.
Maybe in the very, very short term, but even there, it's not that good. Yep. It's just coming back from what we had 4 years ago. And so the problem was he wasn't objective in his categorization of Harris's wins versus Trump's wins. So if you use these keys correctly,
right,
you would have been able to predict the outcome of the election.
Yeah, she loses.
And she loses.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, or fortunately,
I remember he was on
one of the shows the week before the election and predicting, using his things and predicting. And I remember reading those and going through them and go, oh man, this is. There's no doubt that they set this up.
Yeah.
And he took the beating on purpose.
He did.
Yeah.
Because he believed all the hype.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
He didn't know.
Yes, in politics, you should not believe your own press reports.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I find that hilarious because, again, he's a professor for 50 years.
Oh, my God.
He goes out, don't blaspheme against me. Dude.
They're very insecure people.
Yeah.
I mean, and I just mean that in general. I mean, they can't handle it. I mean, some people, there's a great commercial I heard on the radio today. It's about cryo sleep. In other words, instead of crying and get yourself all worked up, we're going to put you into cryo sleep.
Oh, I saw that.
Yeah, we're going to put you into cryo
What is
sleep
it?
for 4 years, so you won't even know.
It's
that
like
the
it's
Trump
like these sleeping pods. It's not real. It's a fake ad, but it's some satire thing. But there's these sleeping pods. You can pay for them, and you go in the sleeping pod and you sleep for 4 years. You wake up and Trump is gone.
Right. Or
50% off.
Yeah.
50% off. You can get another 4 years.
That's right.
If Vance wins.
Oh man, that's funny.
Which is
it was great. I said that's a super idea because that, a lot of people are like that. I mean, women, refusing now to take care of their own husbands. And, I mean, the stuff is just insane.
Yeah, it's getting ridiculous.
People, one woman got out and literally said, "I'm never going to speak to my family ever again."
Yeah.
I mean,
there was a professor from, I think, Harvard or some Ivy League institution. He was saying to people's family members, if you voted for Trump, go jump off a bridge or a cliff or something like that.
Wow.
And so the Democrats, they don't lose gracefully as they've claimed that they do for years.
No. I mean, when Obama won the first time, I was completely against it, and I talked about it at church, everything. But when he won, I just got up and I said, "Listen, he won.
Yeah.
This was it. He got a lot of votes. Doesn't matter why.
Yeah.
He is. So that means he's our president. So now we have to really." Pray for him and look out for him.
Yeah.
And that's really the way it should be. None of us are happy when the other side wins.
Right.
Right now, we're in a state of elation, which is good because we've went through a whole lot of torture, physically, emotionally, mentally, every possible way for the past 4 years.
Yeah, definitely. And we should use this as a time to create a generational legacy, meaning we shouldn't just get caught up in the elation, which I don't think a lot of people are doing, which I'm glad about. We should use this as an opportunity in order to pave the road for other generations in the future to have a good life. And yes, nice Trump dance there.
Yeah.
And we should look out for the future generations instead of just caring about ourselves in the present time like the Democrats do.
But what you'll notice is while we're all happy celebrating this election, you'll see on Twitter, everywhere you go, there's videos of these liberals screaming and crying, and they're just they're acting insane. And there's a lot of people laughing about it. Some of them are funny, but to a degree, I mean, these people are seriously, they've been led astray. I mean, they're freaking out over this. The video we just watched, I find that funny because these are two liberal people. These are the people that are. They're the ones leading the people astray.
Yeah.
So it's funny when these guys, they're seething over the election loss and they're fighting over it. That's funny.
Yeah.
But when you see regular people freaking out, screaming, and committing suicide over it, it's kind of a scary thing if you think about it.
It's because they believed everything they were being told.
Yeah.
And one of the greatest things that happened this week, of course, we got Mika and Morning Joe went down to Mar-a-Lago to meet with Trump.
Yeah.
I mean, he's Hitler. He's Mussolini. He's the worst thing that ever happened. We're going to come and see you because we want to bow down and kiss your ring.
Exactly. That's the thing. They make all these people believe that Trump is literally Hitler. And so when he wins, everyone's freaking out. But the people who said he's literally Hitler, they don't believe that.
They don't believe it.
They were all friends with him 9 years ago before he started running. They loved him.
That's right.
Everyone loved him.
And so what does that tell you? It's theater.
Yeah, it's all theater.
It's theater. And even some of the stuff that Trump does and says, we have to chalk it up to theater. He's an actor.
Yeah.
He's a performer. He's a salesperson. And he's really good at what he does. Does it make it right? That's not what we're here to talk about.
Yeah.
He does what he does, and it works.
Right.
So, this is the kind of unfortunate circumstance that we're in right now. So many people actually believed it, didn't realize that people like Biden can get up and say everything that he said and then turn around the next day and go, hey, welcome.
Yeah,
Right.
Smooth transition.
We're going to transition to the Mussolini, Trump administration.
Yeah, right.
No, he did the right thing, and that's what he was going to do regardless.
Yeah.
But they're playing to the crazies.
Yep. So speaking of people who used to love Trump, we've got a clip here from The View, and there was a clip that Joe Rogan showed on his podcast when he had Trump on of Whoopi Goldberg giving Trump a huge hug just right before he ran in 2016 or during the 2016 run for the election. Mm-hmm. And so this is a clip of Sunny Hostin having to issue a legal statement because she slandered, what's his name, Matt Gaetz on air.
Sunny, you have a legal note.
I do have a legal note. Thank you, Whoopi. Matt Gaetz has long denied all allegations, calling the claims, quote, invented, and saying in a statement to ABC News that this false smear following a 3-year criminal investigation should be viewed with great skepticism, that DOJ investigation was closed with no charges being brought.
We'll be right back.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
So if you don't understand what happened,
They hated to do that.
it's hilarious because 3 minutes ago, that's when Sonny had slandered Matt Gaetz, and so Matt Gaetz' team must have sent something in live, and then the producers of the show told Whoopi and Sonny, "Hey, you got to issue a legal note, otherwise we're going to get sued, probably."
Yeah.
So then Whoopi's like, "All right, Sonny, you have a legal note you'd like to make." And her face, she's like, "Oh yeah, I'd love to make this legal." Sure.
Yeah, right.
But okay, so what just happened like an hour ago? Matt Gaetz withdrew from being Trump's attorney general pick, which is huge. So Trump issues a statement on Truth Social saying, "I greatly appreciate the recent efforts of Matt Gaetz in seeking approval to be attorney general. He was doing very well, but at the same time did not want to be a distraction for the administration, for which he has much respect. Matt has a wonderful future, and I look forward to watching all the great things he will do."
You know, that doesn't take me totally by surprise because everything Trump does is calculated. He knew Matt Gaetz was going to be a very controversial choice, but yet he did it anyhow. I think what he was doing is sending a message. Kind of like if you got bad neighbors and you go out and you get like a ferocious dog and you put him in your yard, even if it's just for a couple of nights, you know, suddenly your neighbors begin to think a little bit different. I think the deep state was in panic mode.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what Trump wanted. Meanwhile, he must have another choice that's going to be just as good, if not better, than Matt Gaetz, to be able to sick the dogs
I think
on those people that actually deserve it.
You have a good point there. I think that maybe what Trump and his advisors were thinking is if we put forth Matt Gaetz as attorney general, and if he withdraws after getting a bunch of backlash, since everything was focused on him for that period of time, the other people that the left didn't like will be more easily confirmed because they're not as crazy as Matt Gaetz. So it's like the art of the deal.
Good
you
point.
set the standards super high, and you really only want it here. And you're negotiating up here, and they're like, we can't accept this. And so they whittle it down, and you move it back up, and then you eventually get to where you wanted it to be.
The art of the deal.
Exactly.
When I read that book for the first time, and I've read it a couple of times, I began to see so many of the techniques in operation in everything that he does.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize it. I mean, I did a lot of real estate in my past too, and I didn't realize that actually those are techniques that some of the most skilled people in the world use.
Yeah.
And so there's no reason why he wouldn't continue, and that's what he's doing.
Right. Yeah.
So people are concerned about whether or not he's going to be in Congress still because he withdrew. But what I'm seeing here is that he resigned from the 118th Congress.
Yes.
But was elected to the next one.
Oh, okay.
So he's still in. Just in a different
Okay.
seat, I guess.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how that worked either.
Yeah.
So, if that's what it says, then I knew there had to be something there to it because, in fact, I was wondering why he resigned so early before confirmation.
Because maybe his resignation didn't matter.
Yeah.
So,
in the end, yeah.
I don't know who Trump's going to pick, but people are worried. Like, okay, is the Trump administration getting weak now? So I mean, I don't think so. I mean, we've got a lot of great picks still. Everything else is great. Like the Doge team. Musk and Vivek. That's going to be huge. I think that'll be great. He's got a lot of great picks in different spots. We don't really know what's going on with this position, attorney general, but we can only hope and pray that it will be someone else who's just as good, if not better.
Absolutely.
Speaking of the House, there was a couple stories out this week about a new congressman who was elected to Congress. His name is Tim McBride, and he claims that he's a woman now, so he identifies as trans, and he's calling himself Sarah. And so Michael Knowles broke the story about 6 days ago, and he said, I know no one's paying attention to this right now because we're all excited about the win, but we're going to have a big issue when it comes to the next Congress, because you're going to have a man who claims to be a woman, and he's going to want to use the women's bathrooms. And so we can win the elections and all this, but if we don't stand on this principle, we might as well just forfeit all of our power because it doesn't matter. And so South Carolina Republican Nancy Mace introduced a bill in the House to prevent males from using the female bathrooms. And then she went one step further, and she authored a second bill aimed at preventing men from using women's bathrooms throughout the entire federal government. And so we have this clip here of...
But that depends on what they define as a man.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's always going to come down to something technical.
True. But I think that they're going to define it as biological male or female. I mean, some of her language, she says that only biological men should be able to use the men's bathrooms.
Yeah.
Which I get for the legal reasons why they're saying that. I think you should just call him a man because he's a man. You can't be like a biological man but a spiritual woman or something. So he's just a man.
Well, I don't know.
But the point is, I think they're doing that so they're very technical in their wording, and that's what the bill says. Only biological men can use men's bathrooms, and only biological women can use women's bathrooms.
So they're going to have like a check station up front? I mean, I don't understand.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, it gets so ridiculous.
It does.
You know, where does it end?
Right.
That's why we got to cut it off now so it doesn't grow any further.
Well, that's one way to get his point across.
That's not all right.
Well, I don't know. I mean, that is an option.
Okay.
I mean, he could go for the full surgery.
Could cut it off.
And then become,
anyway,
a supposed woman, I guess.
No, just a eunuch, but this is his response here.
Whenever you see a politician or a political party focus in on an issue that impacts a handful of people in a handful of places, you have to ask yourself why. And the answer to that is they are trying to distract. They are trying to distract from what they are actually doing. And over the next 4 years, every single time we see any member of the Trump-Vance administration talk about trans people, talk about immigrants, talk about Muslims, talk about any vulnerable group in this country, look what they're doing with their right hand. Because I can guarantee you at that same moment, they are working to pick the pockets of American workers. They're working to fleece seniors by privatizing Social Security and Medicare. They're working to undermine the critical programs and benefits that Americans of every background and every political persuasion rely on to just get through the day.
So what I did is I went to Donald Trump's campaign website. And if you type in donaldjtrump.com/platform, scroll down to point 14, it states, this is what he's going to do. Fight for and protect Social Security and Medicare with no cuts, including changes to retirement age. And then further down under Chapter 6, titled Protect Seniors, the Trump platform states, quote, Republicans will tackle inflation, unleash American energy, restore economic growth, and secure our borders to preserve Social Security and Medicare funding for the next generation and beyond. We will ensure that these programs remain solvent long into the future by reversing harmful Democrat policies and unleashing a new economic boom. And so he's very clear. We're not touching the Social Security reforms. We're not reforming it.
But only a select number of people in the country actually do any research.
Right.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
You know, a vast number of people get their information from some kind of major news source, which we know they don't always tell the truth.
Right. So he's saying that the Republicans are distracting by this issue. One, the Republicans aren't the ones who brought it up.
Right.
Okay, you got elected to Congress, and you're making this an issue. If you had just got elected and said, okay, I'm only going to use the men's bathroom because I'm really a man, there wouldn't have been an issue. And then he says that Republicans with their right hands are trying to distract so that they can get to Social Security and reform it and make it privatized.
Can I just say, talk about putting lipstick on a pig. Sorry.
Ouch.
Sorry.
Yeah, we forgive you.
Sorry.
Yeah, we forgive you. That's really harsh. How can you be so harsh?
I don't know. I'm just an evil person, I guess.
Yeah, so
Does she
they're
have
the ones.
lipstick on?
He, yes.
Yes, he.
Oh, he. I'm sorry. Yeah, I gave in.
You did.
Yeah, that's
You
sad.
crumbled.
That's bad.
But that's what they do. They try to change the language so that it's hard for regular people to be able to communicate. Because you look and you say, okay, long hair, lipstick, must be a woman. Well, no, it's a man. He's a man, and he presents himself as a woman in order to confuse people.
Yeah.
And so to have him elected to Congress in the first place is to say, you're getting somebody there with bad judgment who's supposed to be writing our laws. Is that a good thing? Probably not.
What state elected this
Delaware.
person? Of course.
Yeah, Wilmington,
Okay.
I think. Wilmington, Delaware.
Yeah, Wilmington, Delaware.
Wilmington.
You know, it's scary. New England, up and down.
Whole place
Yeah.
blue.
It's just, but if you look closely at the maps locally, you'd be surprised. It's
think-
only still the big cities that are really.
I think Connecticut had one of, like, out of the top 5 states, had one of the largest red shifts. Mm-hmm. It still didn't go
Yeah.
red.
No, but
There's only like one corner in the top right that is
it
red.
was all red. Yeah.
But it's one of the had one of the largest shifts
Yeah.
to the right, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, if you look at the points for voters, especially ages 18 to 24, it was a 16-point shift for young men from Harris to Trump. He won young men by, I believe, 1 point.
serious.
So 16-point shift or swing from Harris to Trump. And then for young women, exactly the same.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a 5-point, it was
No.
16 points
And a lot of that, I think,
to Trump.
a lot of that, I think, was his direct media,
Yeah.
like podcasting. I think
yeah.
when going on those shows, I think made a significant difference,
definitely.
impact.
100%.
Yeah.
The Joe Rogan podcast,
Yep.
Theo Von,
Absolutely.
Les
Yeah.
Friedman. He
Yep.
went on some comedian podcasts. He went on tons of podcasts.
Yeah.
And that was all thanks to his
That
son,
was
Barron.
his son.
Yeah.
Because he watches these guys and he's
Yeah.
like, hey, go on this.
He's like 7 foot tall.
I know, that
Did you
guy's
see him?
tall.
Yeah,
He's
wow.
huge.
He
Yeah.
is. He's a big guy.
Yeah, he is.
Makes Trump look like a tiny little plastic soldier.
Yeah.
He's huge, yeah. It's
Wow.
crazy. But
All right.
Great job.
And with that, let's get to Ask the Pastor.
We have to use scripture against the enemy in order to get him to flee. You got to stick with the word, though. You can't hit him with anything else. It's got to be the word of God.
All right, so Pastor Mike, the question is, should church leaders require Christians to tithe since God commanded tithing in the Old Testament?
Absolutely. Take it right out of their checking account. That's what I say. Let's go for it. Well, the whole concept of tithing the word is an Old Testament word, if you will.
Okay.
And the first one to bring, Melchizedek brought tithes. And
Yeah.
I mean, a tithe is 10% of your income. Personally, a lot of people look at it in the New Testament and they say, well, it's not in the New Testament, we shouldn't be tithing. And I go, okay, great. I prefer to take the New Testament standard, which is, it's all God's. Mm-hmm. And, give 10% is like way too little.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got to shoot for a higher standard.
Mm-hmm.
does it say that?
No, but the idea is that we are generous givers.
Right.
And that if there's a need and we can meet it, and we don't, it's sin.
Right.
So it goes way above and beyond the initial 10% that was mentioned throughout the Old Testament. But our standard, the way we do it at church very simply is we require minimally that our leaders are tithers.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
A minimum tithe.
Right.
And we don't ask people, we teach on it, but we
Yeah.
don't ask people to tithe. But many of our people actually go above and beyond.
Okay.
Because it's called tithes and offerings.
Right.
Right.
And so people get that confused sometimes, whatever. But the tithe is a 10% of your income, if you will, gross,
Right.
not net. But
Okay.
That's
So like whatever comes in.
technically whatever comes in,
Right.
inheritances,
Yeah.
checks, government check, doesn't matter what it is,
Mm-hmm.
on the gross, that's 10%. And then offerings are above that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So you make an offering for this thing or this, something in church or a guest speaker, whatever. Those are
Yeah.
all above and beyond.
Yeah, okay.
But there are churches that have strict bylaws about tithing.
Mm-hmm.
They teach it. They demand that their people tithe. Some denominational churches also have, they don't call it a tithe, but they have a mandatory giving. So in other words, like you make a pledge and then we're going to make sure you stick to it.
Oh,
Like
okay.
they send you a letter every so often and
Oh,
say,
really?
well, you're short of your pledge,
Okay.
for the year.
Okay.
I don't believe in any of that.
Yeah.
I just believe we should be teaching about what the tithe was. We should be teaching about New Testament standards of giving.
Yeah.
And then we should allow people to, do as they will.
Yeah, there's the scripture, 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 7. Each one must give as he has decided in his heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And so what Paul's saying there is each person, well, earlier on in Romans, he says that we are dead to the law so that we can live to Christ. And so as we love Christ, that will transform every part of our being, including how we give. And so the standard is not just a tithe of 10%. It's now whatever is needed to support the church or whatever God gives to you to give, right?
Yeah.
So everything is God's. And when you see a need, you shouldn't be saying, how can I get out of this and only give 10%? Or how can I tithe? How can I give less? You know, when you have that question, you're starting out on that ground like, okay, how can I give less here? You're already beginning on the wrong foot.
Yeah. We've been talking about the Good Samaritan for a few weeks in church, and Luke, and there's a perfect example. I mean, he stopped and did something that the priest and the Levite didn't do. He took care of the man, bound up his wounds, did the best he could, brought him to an inn, and then gave the guy money.
Yeah.
And then,
take care of him,
said, if there was any more, when I come back, I'll give you the rest.
Trust
So
me. Yeah.
he must have known the guy, or they must have known each other, or whatever the case was. But the point is that he expended a lot of money.
Yeah.
A few days wait. And that's a lot more than 10%.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was an example of going above and beyond and meeting a need. And that's really the New Testament example. And that's why Jesus spoke about that and used that as an example.
Yeah.
So I have like a bit of a two-part question.
Sure.
One, is it a sin if a Christian doesn't tithe at least 10%? And secondly, are there rewards for those who do tithe and punishments for those who don't tithe?
Okay, great question. Personally, I don't believe. I got to be careful how I say this.
Okay.
I don't believe it's sin to withhold tithing, but yet I do believe there are consequences for not being generous.
Okay.
In other words, I think, God looks at the heart. And when we say that, we have to realize if we go against our own conscience, that could be sin. So in other words, if we're withholding, but we really want to give, but we're withholding, well, that could be sin. You know what I mean? But in general, is it a sin to withhold and to not give? I don't believe it is. But I do believe you're harming yourself in the way of blessings, because God's desire is to bless those. And so how does that work? Well, you can't outgive God. So the more you give, the more generous you are. The law of reciprocity kicks in. Give, and it will be given unto you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. That's the whole idea of, filling something up in a cup and then shaking it and, until it presses down until you could, I'm going to get more. And then it just begins to overflow. Well, with God, that's really the way it is.
Yeah.
And you could teach that. But I don't think people can understand it fully unless they actually try it.
Experience it. Okay.
We've had opportunities where we give people a chance. Well, look, try tithing for like 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, whatever. And we've done it a few times over the years, and people have come without exception every single time, 1 or 2, whatever. But people came and they said, wow, man, we got blessed from this, and we got this happened, and and I said, do you think that was coincidence?
Right.
Because I don't believe in coincidence either. But do you think it was coincidence?
Yeah.
Well, no, of course it's not coincidence.
Yeah.
It's because you stepped out in faith, and believed God, and His word is true.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that scripture Malachi 3:10, I think it is, it talks
3:10.
about how it's pressed down, shaken together, and the word blessing there, it doesn't just mean financial blessing. So you could get blessed in a different way that is, let's say, God responding to your giving. You shouldn't give so that you receive money back. That's not the reason to give. But the word blessing there could mean that God blesses you in a different way with maybe a relationship or something like that.
Yeah.
And so when we give, we shouldn't give to get blessed, but we understand that that is how God works. And also, if you're saying, I want to figure out how I can give less, you should pause, really think about that, because that, to me, that says that there's something deep within your heart that is coming out in the way of not wanting to give. It's showing that there's something deeper there that you're holding back from, and it's just manifesting itself in the way that you don't want to give.
Yeah.
So it might be a deeper thing that's affecting relationships in your life and different things like that.
Yeah, and don't even realize it.
Yeah.
But just as a point of clarity, good measure, pressed down, shaken it. That's Luke 6:38, I believe.
Okay.
And then in Malachi, it says, bring forth the tithes and offerings, into the storehouse.
Okay,
Prove
yes.
me now. Herewith says the Lord, if I'll not open the windows of heaven and pour out a blessing, there shall not be room enough to receive it. And that's the idea of not just a storehouse, but actually your own storehouse.
Yeah.
And that's the way God works. But it's always by faith. If Moses didn't step in the water, I don't think the sea would have parted.
Right.
Yeah.
It does take faith to trust God, believe God, and then to see the blessing on the other side.
So there are obviously a lot of people in churches that that don't tithe, they're not super involved in their churches, and they feel like the money subject is a scam for the church just to make more money. And I'm sure there are a lot of people that don't tithe because of that. So they're not necessarily sinning, though God's probably calling them to be involved, to bless the church, and by turning away from that, it's missing the mark in a way. So it may kind of be sin, but more or less they're missing out on a greater blessing. Is that?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's what it is. And most of those people who don't give or whatever, a lot of them really don't believe in what they call organized religion.
Right.
So they look at it from a negative perspective to begin with, and they say, well, most of the money that you take in goes to, buildings and supplies and salaries or whatever. In our case, there's no salaries, but we have a building and we have expenses, insurance, and there's a lot of expenses that go. So the truth is, yes, a large amount of money that comes in goes to
the church,
X, Y, and Z. We purchase equipment. We we give away things, in the form of tapes or CDs or things over the years that we've done. All of that was from the giving, but we also reach out into the community.
Yeah.
So I think if people looked at it with a truly honest, approach, and say, okay, well, where does your money go? And once a year, at least, we give out a spreadsheet shows all of our income and where it all went to. And you begin to look at it and you say, wow, a couple $100,000 doesn't go very far.
No. Right.
And it really doesn't.
No.
Now, of course, some churches do have a salary, a pastor getting a salary or some income. We have some of our health insurance covered and cell phones, some things like that. But again, like anything, the world that doesn't understand about Christianity and church, they're always looking for you to give it all. Give all of what you have.
Right.
Be like Jesus and give it all. Of course, they didn't understand they had a treasury, so they had to have money. So they're looking at it from a negative perspective. And I usually try not to even involve myself in a discussion with someone like that because you're not going to win.
No. Yeah, the funniest type of people are the Christians that go to church only on Sundays for the few hours. We love what you're doing, Pastor. It's excellent, but we're not going to give you any money. Keep doing whatever you're doing with the church. It's great. We support you all the way. But if the church can't afford heat and everything's going downhill, we don't really care.
Yeah, that's not our problem.
Keep doing what you're doing, but we're not going to support you.
Now, if you're going to go out and help, the homeless or whatever, let us know and we'll give you some money. And then, of course, they reach into their pocket and pull out the smallest denomination they have. Throw it in the basket. But again, that's the difference between someone who has a transformed mind. And one who is not yet transformed. Because the person who becomes transformed, it's a slow process, though. The last thing to get transformed is your wallet.
For sure,
Right? I mean, that's just a fact of life. I mean, not for everybody. But for me, it was. I mean, I was saved, born again. I was a leader in the church and tithing. I'm like, that ain't happening, man. I'm making too much money.
When you're not a Christian, that's the only thing keeping you alive. It's paying the bills. It's bringing food to the table. If you're not involved in God, then you don't think He's the one providing. So your money is the one that gets you through. So giving that up is a big thing.
And it's what defines you to a degree. How much you have, what kind of car you got, it defines you. So to allow that part of you up is a sacrifice. Well, that's the final step.
Well, when God says He wants all of your heart, as you once said, the Greek word for all means all.
All.
So
it's all, baby.
He wants all of your heart.
It's it. But once you practice tithing, and I've been practicing tithing now for close to 40 years, give about 38 probably. Whatever. Like I said, I didn't tithe right from the very beginning. God's never let me down. Now, have I had losses? Yes. Have I had things go wrong? Yeah. But when I give, God always blesses. And it doesn't come across all the way like if I give $10, I get back 10 or 100. It's a whole blessing, you know?
And you're especially blessed when you give out of your need.
It's
one thing if you're a millionaire and you give 10% and you're fine, it doesn't really affect you that much. But when you're broke and you give the last little bit that you have, I think that's where the biggest blessing comes in.
Yeah, I always wonder, why didn't Jesus stop the woman giving the last mite that she had into the offering? Oh, no, keep this, buy yourself some. Jesus didn't say no. He didn't say stop. Why? Because he knew that she would have a blessing. And that's the way it has to be.
And we get awfully focused here on our earthly stuff and our earthly perspective. But Paul and God talk throughout the Bible about how we need to be heaven-focused, focused on things above. And so You might not be as blessed as you would like here on earth, but you're storing up treasure in heaven that won't rot and that no one's going to come in and steal.
Yeah. Amen to that, brother. That's you reach a certain point where you realize that it's definitely better to be storing heavenly treasure than earthly treasure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Way better.
So I'm at that point now where I understand that. I know it's still nice to have the earthly stuff, don't get me wrong, but good food, nice rides, whatever. But honestly, I realize that that's only temporal. That's all going to rust, rot, fall apart, die, whatever. But what we place in eternity, it'll be there waiting for us.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. So if you have any questions, post them in the comments section below, and maybe some controversial fun ones for us. And we'll get to them next week. God bless.